Last Exit to Fez Night. I've decided I'll try to go back to the originally on Fez Night. Well, not all the time. I kind of like this phase where I was going just quirky, just nonsensical Fez Night titles, random sort of things. Oh, I might go back to that. But I decided to touch back on a literary thing. And there was a book that I read, and they made a film out of it, Last Exit to Brooklyn, which was an intense book and a pretty intense movie. So speaking of the visual media, television, finally the episode, there's a new episode of Doctor Who out. I think it was called The Bells of St. Sebastian or something like that, The Bells of something. And so, partway through the show, oh, and he has a new a companion. I always like the new Doctor Who. I always like the companions are really, really great. Billy Piper, the first one, in the new Doctor Who, and then of course Amy Pond. I can't remember, Karen Gillan. And you know how I feel about redheads. I just adored her. Except that she was dragging her boyfriend and then later husband around on the adventures, and that sort of put a different, I guess, it gave the writers more potential to do different things, or the writer. But now I'm glad to be back to just the companion. And I like her personality, the new companion. I can't remember her name, but yeah, that looked good. And the main reason why I brought it up is because at one point, Doctor Who is like looking for something, and he's going through this like chest full of things, and he pulls out his fez. Oh, I get a kick every time I see like a fez used in stuff. It makes me feel like I was some sort of in touch with some sort of cultural, emerging icon, even though fez has been around, forever. And it's been pointed out to me. No, I didn't invent the idea of using a fez as a gimmick. Tommy Cooper and Laurel and Hardy in The Sons of the Deserts and different things. They even had an episode of Family Guy where they all put on fezzes. Fez mostly means like you're part of a club. And everybody who wears a fez is part of the Royal Order of the Fez, right? Yeah, they had the last episode of the season finale of The Walking Dead. And yeah, spoiler alert. Hopefully any of you that are watching the show already saw. Oh, let me write something down here. I don't forget to mention this. Yeah, spoiler alert. Hopefully if you're into the show, you've already watched it. I don't know, fast forward through this if you don't want to hear anything about Walking Dead, but I'm not going to give out a whole bunch of stuff, but of course. Okay, here we go. Spoiler alert. Andrea dies. Andrea gets bitten, and she has to off herself so she doesn't become a zombie. And that character she was really annoying me. I was like, oh, you stupid. How can you trust this guy? I mean, even if you didn't see these things that we could see, there would have to be definitely something off about him. Don't you think? Don't you think anytime you go into a situation where there is one person, the leader, who is basically being the dictator, basically if there's no sense of at least a small group, a council, when you have one person that cannot be challenged, whose word is everywhere, and if I'm in any ever situation where there's no allowing feedback, or he would kind of pretend to do it, I guess, maybe it might fool some people, avoid those situations. Even if things are really terrible and you need a strong leader, that's a very, very dangerous situation. And albeit for the other group, the good guys living in the prison, he pulled that too. My word is law. We're gonna listen to me. But you could tell he took advice from the old man, and then later he came back around full circle and said I can't be solely in charge. I need something from each one of you, and that shows the differences between the two groups. The reason why I'm thinking of that is because a new guy came to work, real nice kid, right out of the Marines, Actually, what he did in the Marines was he worked with electronics, so he's not, he wasn't like the typical, you know, he wasn't going to be out there in the field fighting. As far as I could have went that way. I don't know, but anyway, the subject came up with The Walking Dead, and I mentioned how, the Andrea character was really annoying me, and this guy said, yeah, because she's too liberal. She's too like a liberal. And I was like, what did you say? And his reasoning is that what made her like a liberal is because she stayed in a situation that was comfortable, that she didn't want to give it up, because her friend was like, this guy's up, and that's who she should have listened to. Didn't she trust her instincts? I mean, just besides her own instincts, that she ignored her friend who said something's going on here, and she wanted to leave. And so I can see him saying, Andrea, the character, wanted to stay in a comfortable place, but I don't really think that's such a liberal attitude, because liberals have put themselves in very uncomfortable situations. What comes to mind is registering blacks to vote in the South during the segregation era. I mean, that was a very dangerous, uncomfortable situation to place oneself in. And so I don't think that's the whole... See, this is part of the stigma. This is part of what Fox News, this whole AM radio, right-wing media, tries to paint being liberal as a bad word. And I don't blame him exactly, because he's probably getting his information from those sources. And then later, Rick, the leader of the other side, becomes a little more democratic, so he starts leaning more slightly left, instead away from an authoritarian situation, and I would say left, or maybe you want to say democratic. But the one thing that I would say he was correct, but for the wrong reasons, is calling Andrea liberal, is that her explanation for what she did is that she said she didn't want anybody to die. That she was trying to have it both ways. She was trying to get some sort of mediation, get some sort of peace. And that could be a liberal sort of bleeding heart sort of thing. But in that case, she ended up causing more death and more problems. And I think it was liberalism combined with naivete. That's what the right always tries to paint liberals as being naive. But I disagree. Not every liberal is naive. Some of us have our eyes wide open. And I am not so strict to what I call my political beliefs, or this is the one thing: never trust anybody that's rigid. I'm always free to make a compromise and say, well, in this case, this case, let's kill this guy. I'm not afraid to go to war in this situation. You can't, one of the things is I read there was a study. Oh, wow, I went long. So I have to do this in 2 parts. Oh, drag. I just started babbling. Yeah, as you all know, because of Pops' flagging campaign, Fez Night is no longer can go to those long, long stretches anymore. Which is probably a good thing. There's a silver lining to that whole thing, isn't there? Yeah, there was somebody said the notion, the appeal of the whole zombie phenomenon, because it's not the show Walking Dead, but there's a whole thing going on where people dress up, pretend to be zombies, and the joke about the upcoming zombie apocalypse and what would you do and how would you arm yourself. It's because the American public is just in general unhappy. It's been a long slog, this recession, and it has. And I don't. It's hard to turn these things around, so I don't blame Obama for that. I would blame the GOP for getting in his way. But here's my major criticism of Obama, and this is why I would not want him to be president for life. He's a corporatist, and I've been seeing it more and more. Is that he's a corporatist? That he takes money from big business and he moves things in that direction. And one of the things that's scary is that there was something slipped into a bill that had to do with genetically modified organisms. And what it does is protects corporations like Monsanto, for example, that are experimenting with genetically, produce or any kind of genetically modified organism, that if something goes wrong, they cannot be sued in most situations. I don't know about all the legal writing, but basically they're getting protection. And maybe you might argue is that, oh, well, it frees them up to do research and try things and all that. But it's a very, very scary thing and a wrong thing. And nobody is taking credit for slipping that part in the bill. And this comes from a sort of a left-leaning media, the Young Turks, is that it probably can be traced back to Obama and a general policy of being a corporatist. We need to call him out on that. Oh, okay, and then, which we segue into the next thing. Do you believe that Obama is the Antichrist?